welcome to yet another edition of Inside Politics. My name is Fred Indemoli. Today we take a look at quite a number of things that have been happening. It's been quite a busy week politically, with the BBI case failing to go through at the Supreme Court, and the big news that's making headlines throughout this weekend, and that has to do with that attack on a chopper that was being used by Azimio presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga in Soy on Friday. We'll be discussing that with my panelists today, but before that, two members of parliament, Caleb Kositany and Oscar Sudi, as well as Uasin Gishu Speaker David Kiplangat, have been summoned to appear before the DCI in connection with the stoning of ODM leader Raila Odinga on Friday. This as police in Uasin Gishu arrested 17 suspects in connection with the incident in which a chopper carrying Raila and vehicles were pelted with stones after he attended the burial ceremony of businessman Jackson Kibor at his Kabenes farm. Leaders across the political divide have condemned the incident, with the deputy president personally apologizing to Raila over the incident. But as KTN's political affairs reporter Daniel Kariuki says, the incident in Soy is just one of the many cases of political intolerance that have happened in the past.
Images of ODM leader Raila Odinga's chopper Friday. The chopper was pelted with stones by rowdy youth in Kabenes, Uasin Gishu County, after Odinga had just boarded, shattering the screen. The chaos were condemned across the political divide, with the head of Odinga's presidential campaigns, Professor Makau Mutua, calling on the law enforcers to speed up investigations. Deputy President William Ruto has personally apologized to Raila Odinga over the incident, terming it unfortunate and retrogressive.
All members of UDA and our Kenya Kwanza alliance must never engage in any acts of violence. Violence is retrogressive, primitive, and as I said, tears down our democracy. I also take this opportunity to apologize to the Honorable Raila Odinga for what happened to him yesterday. It was really unfortunate, and I hope those who engaged in this exercise regret what they did.
You can be a fan of a certain politician, but that does not give you license to abuse or even use violence on other candidates. Uko kura moja kwa mfuko, kwenda fuata ule mtu unafuata kwenda pigia kura. Pana sumbua watu wengine.
I'm appealing to politicians not to zone their areas. I've said this time and again that the recipients of these problems will be workers, children, and women. These men will run away.
The responsibility lies with the deputy president. An apology is not enough. He has to go on the ground and calm his supporters, identify the culprit, and assist the police to arrest the culprit. Because the buck stops with the party leader. The party leader is William Samoei Ruto.
Vitendo ya fujo wakati huu wa siasa. We must condemn violence in any form. We must continue condemning the perpetrators of violence, particularly as we head towards this general election.
17 suspects have been arrested in connection with the incident. Police are now using their phones to carry out forensic analysis. According to Uasin Gishu County Commissioner Stephen Kihara, any politician found to have incited the youth will face the law.
From the details that we are going to get from them, if it touches to the politician, I want to assure you, regardless of whoever is involved, we are going to deal with him.
The county commissioner has dismissed claims of laxity on the part of the police.
Those issues are coming from politicians trying to shift the blame game, to shift the blame. But we even have the statement from the captain himself.
This, as police say, preliminary investigations indicate that the chaos were organized and coordinated by 3 politicians: Soy MP Caleb Kositany, Kapsaret MP Oscar Sudi, and David Kiplangat, Speaker of Uasin Gishu County. The 3 have been summoned to appear in person before the Rift Valley DCI Regional Coordinator on April 3rd for further investigations into the involvement in the incident. Incidents of the political intolerance have been on the increase in the country, a worrying trend if not addressed. A few days ago, Nairobi woman representative Esther Passaris was forced to cut short her campaign trail after rowdy youth took off with her campaign truck keys.
Sasa ile munaenda munatupa mawe. Hata mimi hapa Nairobi nimetupiwa mawe mara 2. Nataka kuambia vijana, hii siasa ya kutupa mawe na kuumiza ma candidates si siasa nzuri. Tunataka siasa ya amani. Sisi tukiita mkutano kama hii tunatambua kila mtu ambaye yuko hapa. Vijana, warembo, wa mama.
Several months ago, Deputy President William Ruto's convoy was torn by rowdy youth in Kondele area, Kisumu County. Kenyans are worried over the incidents as the country gears up for the August polls. Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i has, however, assured Kenyans that security agencies were on high alert to avoid chaos. The NCIC has also been put on the spot, with Kenyans dismissing it as toothless.
Cohesion should really be vigilant and apprehend these people. Any hate speech, anybody seeing suspicious should not be let loose. Let them be apprehended.
Daniel Karaoke, KTN News.
That's the biggest news this weekend. It's still a headline, main headline on the dailies today. Chopper attack. They had questions on the Standard and on the Sunday Nation how attack on Raila Chopper was planned. It is one of the biggest talking points this weekend, an unfortunate incident, but it raises a lot of questions. 128 days left to the August 9th election. Allow me to introduce my panelists this morning. Rita Oyer, communications and marketing professional. Good morning, Rita. It's good to have you in studio.
Good morning. Thank you.
We also have Didmas Mokua, political risk analyst, calls himself the Duke of Mosocho. Didmas, good morning. It's good to have you in studio as well.
Good morning. My pleasure.
Yeah. Javas Bigambo, political commentator, is joining us shortly, as well as Ken Echesa, lawyer and political commentator. He'll be joining us by way of phone later on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start off with this big talking point, and this is the attack on the chopper and the entourage of Raila Odinga while in Uasin Gishu County. 128 days to the election. This must be a cause for concern, given the fact that traditionally, typically, we've seen that elections are quite heated. And as we get closer to the election, we know our history with violence. Well, these are things that have been witnessed in different places, and Daniel Karaoke, our reporter there, mentioned just a few of the instances. In this election cycle, what happened in Kondele when the deputy president visited the area, now what we're seeing Raila Odinga going through. It speaks a lot about our maturity in as far as politics is concerned, but then again it raises questions in as far as security agencies and their role in elections is concerned, because we've never seen anyone take responsibility for any of these instances of violence, and this should be the problem right now. This is what we should be discussing right now. Rita, let's start with you. What do you think the problem is? Because yes, cases of violence will continue being reported, because up till now, no one has been able to take responsibility. No one has been made to take responsibility for any of the instances that we've just mentioned in the story that was reported by Karaoke just a few moments ago.
That's a very interesting question, and something that we need to collectively think about as a citizenry, because it amazes me that was not even a political function. It was a burial. It wasn't a political function. It was neither Azimio nor Kenya Kwanza event. But then this violence happened. That shows you the level of tension that is within the citizenry. And as much as I'm really sorry to Honorable Raila for going through that, because that would portend chaos if they went up and an accident happened or something like that. But then I also want to commend the Deputy President, because I think this is the first time a politician who's a presidential candidate took responsibility, personal responsibility for an event where, one, wasn't his, two, he wasn't around, he wasn't in that vicinity, but he took personal responsibility. When a similar thing happened in Kondele, I think the presidential candidate on the other side said some very amorphous things like, oh, ni mtu mdogo, why would I do that? So I think the solution, because this is a political problem, I know you're terming it as a security problem, but it's a political problem. I wish our politicians would take the issue of security and violence more seriously and take personal accountability. I am almost glad that a few have been called through, and maybe it is time that we actually see them being, you know.
But don't you think that that's the problem there if we decide to take it as a political problem? Because these are criminal elements. The criminality of such an incident should not be swept under the rug. The fact that they destroyed property, they could have injured someone. If we reduce it to a simple political issue, don't you think that therein lies a problem?
So, you know, we can use a hammer to kill everything, including a fly. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be that way. You see, the way politics is designed is that everyone has a stronghold. There's the battle zones, and then there's the opposition areas. The first thing I saw on social media were people saying, let the DP come to Siaya. He will see. Can he come campaign in our stronghold? We will make it impossible. You see, you cannot micromanage a culture. You only have to instigate a better culture. This is a cultural issue. I do understand the technical of it, but this is a political culture issue. If we keep hammering it with, let the police do this, I mean, how will I dictate? Okay. You know, I just want to look at the bigger picture and to see that this is a social, cultural, political problem. As much as there's criminal elements, there is a personal responsibility and accountability, especially for the presidential candidate. They bring the highest tension. Mm-hmm. Because I am sure, for example, in Uasin Gishu, maybe Azimio don't even have a candidate there. Mm-hmm. So what's the point of hitting the old man? Yeah. It's because of the presidential ticket, you know? So these are political problems. These are social, cultural problems. This is how we have believed politics should be conducted. We have said this is our stronghold, so so-and-so should not come, even if he's just coming for a barrel. He wasn't even coming to campaign. Okay. And the same thing happened to Mama Aida in Meru, if you realize, yeah? All this booing and heckling because somehow this is our area.
I think there's a difference between heckling and jeering, which without necessarily causing damage or harm to any person. Let's bring in Dismas into this conversation. Dismas, is it enough to just blame the politicians? Don't you think that this time around this should be treated as what it is, a criminal incident?
Well, number one, this is a criminal incident which has been occasioned by politicians, and it's a security concern. Because any harm to a presidential nominee like Raila Odinga, William Samoei Ruto, Jimmy Wanjigi and others is a threat to our national security. And anybody in Kenya, be it a politician, be it Tom, Dick or Harry, who wants to plot anything against a presidential nominee must be condemned in the strongest terms possible. And we cannot just wish it away and say that this is a political season, that this kind of violence is going to take place. And in my view, that is now giving a political response to a security problem. A security problem requires a security solution. Because if anybody does harm to Raila Odinga, that is a threat to our national security. If anybody does harm to William Ruto, Jimmy Wanjigi, or indeed another presidential candidate, that is a harm to our national security. But we must give credit to William Samoei Ruto, being the first presidential candidate or nominee to condemn it and to offer his apologies. And one wishes that Raila Odinga would have done the same when violence was visited on William Ruto when he was in Nyanza province. And Raila Odinga should have done the same when violence was visited on Jimmy Wanjigi when he was campaigning in Migori. And outside the presidential candidates, other people have also been visited with violence. For instance, a few days ago, you saw Esther Passaris was visited with violence. And in my view, instead of the security agencies saying that no stone is going to be left unturned, we need to see people behind bars so that they serve as a demonstration that they're not going to allow this kind of mischief to take place. We cannot just sit back and say that this is a political season, that we don't have a candidate in Uasin Gishu or we don't have a candidate in Siaya. So we shouldn't be worried at all. No, we must condemn these politicians. And right now, the buck stops with the agencies to ensure that everybody is arraigned. Anybody who is, anybody who is suspected must go through the process. And also, Raila Odinga must emulate William Samoei Ruto and condemn acts of violence when they take place within his neighborhood or a place where he's got influence.
Javas, karibu sana. And if we decide to look at it through the lenses of politics, simply politics, then we run the risk of normalizing such events when we say probably this principle does not come from this geographical area. Therefore, whenever they visit, then they should be wary that there could be violence meted against them. Don't you think that there is a problem? Because we could say it is our culture, but don't you think that such a culture should be nipped in the bud at this moment?
Thank you so much. First, the courtesy that supporters of certain presidential candidates extend to the rivals of their preferred candidate is very much becoming legend. And whatever happened in Uasin Gishu the other day is something that everyone should frown upon. I wouldn't want to christen it a matter of culture. It's something of bad manners, criminal, unethical, and in fact, criminal offense. As a matter of fact, I must bring myself to the conclusion that the vestiges of barbarism are still inherent in some among us in this 21st century, when people should be thinking logically, should be more tolerant, should accept that competition is actually the element of politics. Additionally, I think I am not contented, as I sit in this chair, with what the government is doing to try and ward off acts of violence in our electoral processes. When we had a couple of by-elections about 2 years ago or so, Matungu and elsewhere, we saw acts of violence. We have not seen measures being taken to cure political violence in this country. Just a few weeks ago, I heard the Principal Secretary for Interior saying that the government is not going to use any resources on matters to do with hate speech in this country in the electioneering period. How sad, how disappointing such a statement is from such a PS in such a ministry. And I say disappointing because we know very well that hate speech issues are what always lead, they are precursors to electoral violence, cases of violence such as that which was meted on Raila Odinga in Uasin Gishu. Additionally, I think we must come to a point where we as a people must insist on the implementation of the law as it is on everyone. The IEBC should now step up. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission should now step up. I expect so much more from the police. I expect so much more as well from all of us. And I think the more we seem to be at ease with cases of political intolerance, which is an intolerable evil, to that extent we are actually risking the growth, the maturation of our democracy. And so, through those lenses, I must say that time shall come, and indeed it has, that we must make sure that we have hygiene in our politics, that we must demand the best from all political parties, that we must demand the best from supporters and members of political parties, but we must also demand the best from ourselves. Because these expectations should not just be of other people, but also of ourselves. And so, much as some political leaders have been summoned to appear tomorrow, much as I know that individuals or culprits of that incident have been called, I think the investigations on political violence should not just be limited to the case of the chopper incidents of Raila Odinga alone. We must actually have active investigation. And right now, I do anticipate as well that the DCI, which is properly resourced, should actually have their persons deployed, their human resources deployed all across the country, all across the constituencies, to ensure that issues of possible incitement of violence are nipped in the bud.
Okay, thank you, Javas. And it also raises a question on the work of some organizations, including the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Now that if we could extend this conversation beyond even just this one instance of violence to political intolerance in general, we know our history, our political history, the way it always seems like violence and politics go hand in hand. We know what happened back in 2007. We don't need to go back to that kind of history. It is for that reason that such organizations, such institutions are created. The IEBC itself is supposed to be checking the conduct of politicians in as far as such instances are concerned. Do you think these institutions are doing their job in as far as this is concerned? Have you seen, because it is rare that we get to see anyone punished or any politician who's found culpable of violence even held to account or disqualified for that matter. Do you think these institutions are actually doing their jobs? Do we need them?
Thank you very much, Fred. I've listened to, sorry, let me respond a bit to what I have heard from Dismas and Javas. And as I was listening to them, I actually wondered, have these people been to the ground? Do they know what politics looks like on the ground? Because what will happen is, you're coming to Uasin Gishu. I am an aspirant there. It is my honor to mobilize people. I will mobilize people who are pro my agenda. This is how it plays out on the ground. How do you then, as a police officer, for example, check my mobilization, check my brief to the people I have mobilized, how I incentivize them, and the actions that are supposed to take for that incentive? That's why I'm saying the biggest responsibility in changing this culture lies with our political elements, our political players. And therefore, the signal and the symbol that William Ruto sent is one that needs to be encouraged and replicated.
Is it enough to actually stop other instances of violence from happening?
Because it is for these politicians that these actors take act, and they have been incentivized to do this. So you have paid me to do a job. It is not like a Gor Mahia game where I'm coming to throw stones because I love the team. These people are actually incentivized to do these things, and we have to really think about implementation from a practical perspective. How it plays out on the ground is very far from the theory that I have heard Javas articulate so well. Yep. But then comes your point. Do these other bodies, IEBC and the National Cohesion body, actually work? As a country, we are not short of laws. We are not short of institutions. We are somehow not even very short of funding, so that we say these people don't have the capacity. We are just lax in the way we hold them to account. And I really fault Parliament. In fact, I feel like Parliament as a checking organization has been our weakest link almost 3 terms in a row. They do not hold these organizations to account. And eventually, it's the people that suffer.
Okay.
IEBC, for it, who's supposed to check if IEBC is following through? Who's supposed to check if the National Cohesion body is following through? Mm-hmm. Who, if they don't have funding, who allocates that funding? At a critical season like this, if someone tells you that an organization that has been in office for 5 years, on the election year, when we need them the most, they will do nothing on hate speech. Okay. How do you rationalize that?
Rita seems to think that this solution can only be found from within the political circles, that it's up to politicians to actually control their crowds. Do you agree with her?
Well, you know, my commiserations to Rita for imagining that we only know the theory around politics and not the practice. And she must be informed that we know both the theory and practice. And this is a security concern that has been created by politicians. So if you want to cure malaria, you are not going to give somebody a painkiller. You are not going to use a Panadol. You must go at the root cause, establish what has caused the disease. You know, you come with a prognosis, and then you are able to manage the process. It's a fact that there are people in the chain. The young men who went to look for boulders and stones to stone the chopper, they were not acting on their own motion. They must have been given instructions by someone. They must have been given resources by someone, and they were given key performance indicators. They were told that when you see Raila Odinga in the chopper, this is what you must do. So the responsible agencies must go through the entire chain, establish who came up with the idea, who gave instructions, who gave the resources, and who was going to take credit. And you know, these agencies have got sufficient resources. They've got lawyers who will go through the entire process. And that's why we are saying that no stone must be left unturned, and we cannot just wish away a security concern and say, this is an anthropological issue, this is a cultural issue, so go look for village elders, go look for the council of elders to sort it out. No. The person who picked the rock, the person who picked the boulder, the person who gave the resources, the person who came up with the idea, they must be responsible for that. And you know, this violence, from the time it's taken place, I doubt whether there's anybody behind bars today on account of electoral violence. And that's why the agencies responsible must take action, as well as the politicians. For instance, you may recall not long ago, when ODM was having the National Delegates Conference, one of the presidential aspirants, Mr. Jimmy Wanjigi, was assaulted outside the venue. but nobody gave an apology. When William Samoei Ruto went to parts of Nyanza province, his convoy was attacked.
Would an apology have been enough?
The first step is to give an apology so that the supporters of these various candidates know that our presidential candidate has no time for this. Because, you know, unfortunately in Kenya, majority of the voters and supporters are emotional and irrational, and others are very eager to please their candidates. So when William Samoei Ruto says that I find this unacceptable, is irrational and emotional base will read the signals and say that if we do this, we are going to be penalized. And in fact, we'd like to challenge William Samoei Ruto, indicated yesterday that anybody who may have participated in this and wants to run for a political office is going to be denied a ticket. That must happen. But you know, we cannot come and say, wait a minute, this is a cultural issue, so it's going to take 10 years for us to cure it. No. Anybody who picks a stone, you know, for instance, in the Muli, can you imagine what would have happened if that boulder would have landed on Raila Odinga's head and he gets admitted to hospital? You know, that is a threat to national security. So we cannot wish away this thing and say, wait a minute, let's look for a group of anthropologists and lawyers, then let's have a roundtable conversation to come up with a solution.
We've had so many conversations, yes. With regard to electoral violence and how we should conduct ourselves around elections, we've had a lot of conversations, and it is time that action is taken. And here we're on page 16 of the Standard today. We have a very strong editorial statement on the same. Political violence has no place in this year's polls. Get yourself a copy of the Sunday Standard and read that as well. Time for our first break. When we come back, we take a look at the BBI and what happened at the Supreme Court. Hopes of President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga reviving the push for constitutional reform were dealt a blow after the Supreme Court declared that the process was unconstitutional. We'll be looking at that with my panelists after the break.